When building formulas, it's important to keep in mind the standard order of operations. Now, if you can remember back to your days in math class, the standard order of operations is the order that a mathematical operation is performed when you're using more than one operator. Go ahead and scroll right on your sample file to see the standard order of operations. I've got an example here also. The standard order of operations states that any mathematical operation must perform any calculation inside of a parentheses first. Next, a mathematical operation must perform all multiplications and divisions working from the left. And last, a mathematical operation will perform all additions and subtractions working from the left. Here's an example. Here we have 5 plus 3 times 2. That gives us 11. We have the same numbers and the same operators here. This gives us 16. Why is that? Well, the order of operations say that multiplications must be done before additions. So in this particular operation, 3 times 2 is calculated first, and then you add that result to 5. 3 times 2 is 6. You add 6 to 5 is 11. Well, in this particular operation, we've got 5 plus 3 in a parentheses. And again, the standard order of operations states that all operations inside of a parentheses are calculated first. So 5 plus 3 is calculated first, which is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. This is the correct answer. So let's take a moment and go through a couple of real-world examples of how you would use some formulas. I'm going to go back to our sample table. And let's say that we want a grand total row here after period 6. So what we'll do here is start a formula by typing the equal sign and then reference the cell right above it. Enter the plus sign, reference that cell. And keep doing that until I reference all the 6 cells. Now you notice that I went out of order here. I clicked B3 and then I clicked B4. In this case, it doesn't matter. Addition is addition and it doesn't matter which order you put these in. Now I can hit enter and I've got a grand total for that row. Now I'm going to want to produce a grand total for all of the columns here. Now instead of retyping this formula for each column, I can simply copy the formula. And I can do that by simply going up to the formula, pressing Ctrl-C, which is the hotkey for copy, highlighting the cells in which I want to paste the formula in, pressing Ctrl-V, which is the hotkey for paste, and pressing enter. So let's do that now. So as you can see, I now have a grand total for all of these columns. But how is that possible? Didn't I put into my formula B8 plus B7 plus B6? Wouldn't the other cells give me the same answer? Well, no. This is because in Excel, formulas have a relative reference. That means they inherently reference relatively. Let's take a look at cell C9. You'll notice that in the formula bar, you don't see B8, B7, B6, B5. You see C8, C7, C6. This is because you moved over 1, so the formula moves over 1. If I move over 2, the formula moves over 2. And when I say move over 2, I mean from the benchmark of B, I'm moving over 2 to D. So the formula actually moves over 2. So on and so forth. I also want a grand total for revenues and units sold across regions for each given period. So I'll type in one formula here, equals, I'll reference cell B3 plus D3 plus F3 plus H3 and press the enter key. There's my grand total for revenues. Now I'll copy this formula using Ctrl-C again. I'll paste it to the right using Ctrl-V, and I should get the grand total for units sold. And I do. Now this is formatted as a $sign, but I can quickly change that. So my revenue grand total in period 1 for all regions is a little over $3 million, and my grand total for units sold is a little over 5,000 units. So let's take a look at the formulas. Remember, the formula here was B3 plus D3 plus F3 plus H3. Now when I copied this formula and pasted it one cell over to K3, all of the cell references in this formula will have moved over one column also. Let's check that out. So it's not B3, D3, F3, and H3. This particular formula says C3, E3, G3, I3. This is because all of the references in this particular formula moved over one column because I did. Now I'm going to copy these two formulas and paste them all the way down. That way I can get the grand total of revenue and units sold for all of the periods. So I've copied this formula all the way down. Now as you can see here, I've got number signs here. All this means is that the column is not wide enough to fit the number. I can quickly remedy that by making the column wider. Double-clicking on the line there. So let's look at the formulas now. In this original formula, I started off with B3 plus D3 plus F3 plus H3. This was my starting point. When I copied this formula down, I basically moved down one row. So all of the cell references here will have moved down one row also. Let's check that out. And it did. Look at the formula bar. It now says B4, D4, F4, and H4. From the original point, I moved down 2 rows in order to copy the formula in line 5, so the cell references here should have moved down 2 also. And again, look at the formula bar, you'll see that it did. Originally, I had B3, D3, F3, H3. Now I've added 2 because I've moved down 2 rows to make it B5, D5, F5, and H5.